Stephen and Heather and Sue, thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Wow. Oh, we have so much talent around here. Aren't we blessed? Yeah. Well, we're going to be talking about change. We're talking about preparing for change. The next week we're talking about coping with change. And this following week is being the change. And you know, this coming week, of course, is Valentine's. And certainly it gives us an indication that we need to be all the love we can be, which we are capable of, when we understand the power of unforgivable, when we unconditional love. And then it's also Black History Month. And if there's any place that we need to continue to do the work of change, it is in our relationships with one another, in relationship to all people of all colors, as we grow together and as we are conscious of the change that needs to take place. So how do we prepare ourselves for change? Well, George Carlin said, you know, just when I discovered the meaning of life, they changed it. I knew the second group would understand. Anyway, this is one I like. It's anonymous. It says, some people will change when they see the light. Others change only when they feel the heat. That's right. And so, what we know by Isaac Newton is that everything continues in a state of rest unless it is compelled to change by forces impressed upon it. And also, studies show that only about 2.5% of the population are innovators of change. Really create ideas that bring about change. And the more important thing, though, is that you're sitting here, that 2.5%, I'm convinced of it. And so today, what I want to do is talk about change from the perspective of three different angles, so to speak. One is a state of being. What are the states of being in the process of change? Number two, what are the stages of change? And then number three, how did Jesus teach us about change? How was Jesus that catalyst, if you would, for change, as we tie those together? So anyway, the stages of change, or states of being, first of all, there's the current state, where we are right now. That's the state where we're normally comfortable. That's a state that we kind of trust once we become comfortable. That's the state that is the culture that you are living in right now. And whether it's good or bad doesn't make any difference, because it's not good or bad, really, but we tend to think that way. But whether it is comfortable or not is what's really important. Being comfortable is more important than the change. And so we tend to kind of like that current state in most cases, even though we recognize there is a need for change. Let me give you an example. Vicki and I spoke at a church in the Midwest. And when we got there, there were 7 people in the church. They paid better than anybody else in the whole area for having ministerial students come in and speak. So you kind of had to get in line, okay? But when you get there, what you find out is there were, the day we were there, 7 people there. Sanctuary about this size, beautifully done. And 2 of them were visitors. Yeah. So as we came in, we were given a little tour, and the minister had been there and started the church for about 45 years and had passed away in 1995. Now, this is 2006. And her desk and her office were still there as a memorial to her. They did not intend to change. And at the end of the service, the 2 visitors were standing and talking to Vicki and I, and I mean talking for 2 minutes and just saying, we're glad you came here today. And the person who is a custodian or a caretaker of the church came over and said, we always close our doors at 12:05. If you'd please leave, we'd appreciate it. I know you don't think that happened. It really did. I'm serious. And see, being where they were was more comfortable than being where they might be. That's what they were really saying. And so therefore, they eventually, when those 5 people died off, the church closed. And I think another one has been started there. But the point is that we're really comfortable, even we know it's not the best practice in our current state of being. Now, the second thing is the transition state. This is where we go through the transition. This is the messy state. This is the state that says, oh my gosh, and you stare yourself kind of in the face. And you say, what in the world is happening here? And am I on the right track? Am I comfortable? Well, yeah, I kind of am because I don't know where I'm going to go. And being in transition, again, brings up lots of feelings. It brings up anxiety. It brings up compassion sometimes. It brings up anger. It brings up resentment. But it also starts in time to bring up joy because you start to understand that you're moving somewhere. You're finding yourself in that state of transition, which might be messy, might cause questions, might cause concerns, but at the same time, you start to understand that the power within you is moving you forward through this time of transition. During a time of transition, sometimes we have to face our stuff and move forward so we can get over our stuff. Because it's always our stuff, as I call it, that gets in the way of our future, of who we truly are, of awakening to who and what we are. And so then the next state is that state of the future state. And this is the one that seems to scare people, even though it's going to come, okay? This is the one that says, whoa, wait a minute. And we can get anxious there too. And it's in that future state sometimes that we resist. But eventually, if we are doing it through the power of the Spirit within us, we relent and the future comes into being. Now, the one thing we all know, I think, is no matter how hard we fight change, change will take place. Change will take place. And it's going to take place faster and faster and faster in the next 15 years. There's going to be more change in the next 15 or 20 years than there has been over 500 years. And I've said that before, but I'm going to keep saying it because I want that to register. Because what I prefer is instead of letting change wake me up, I would rather wake up and become the change so that I can make the difference and be comfortable through the process. I don't want to wake up one day like those folks did in that church and the doors are closed because nobody wanted to change. I want to know what change is coming. I want to look at it seriously so I can move into that future state. Now, as you move through that, there are also some stages of change. So there's a state of change. Now, there's stages of change. How do we move through it? And one of the things is what we call the pre-contemplation stage. Now, the pre-contemplation stage it isn't that we can't see the solution, it is that we can't see the problem. We are kind of unconscious. And we're just not aware there's a problem. And usually if I stay in that state long enough, I come to understand there's a problem, but I do not any longer know how to resolve it. And that's when you stay long enough, you end up in therapy. You end up sometimes in the minister's office. You end up talking to your closest friend. And sometimes during that time, you end up looking outside of yourself for the solution when it's all inside. That's when we are prone to be addictive to shopping, to a way of life, to alcohol or drugs, or some form of addiction that separates us from the good that we are, from the Christ that we truly are. And so we feel separated rather than together. And as we move through that stage, because something's going to happen to let us know, and we come to the contemplation stage. This is, I want to stop feeling so stuck in my stuff. I'm tired of the way things are going for me. I'm tired of the financial issues that I deal with and don't even know what to do. I'm tired of the people who show up in my life that irritate the heck out of me. You know? And so I'm really ready for the change. But I'm not quite sure how to do that. And so if I look outside of myself, I usually am going to find the wrong answers. When I look inside of myself, I think what happens, we attract the right people, we attract the right circumstances that help us to move through the change that we're ready to experience, the transformation that we're saying yes to. And so what happens is that we then move into the preparation stage. What we're doing is planning to take action. You know, in Unity, we say there are 5 principles. And those 5 principles are, one, that there's a presence and power of God, which is all good. The second is that the divine is within me. I am the divine. I am a spiritual being having a spiritual experience in the human condition. And I understand that, and so I start to understand that everything that I'm experiencing is sacred, is a learning opportunity, and is created mostly around my relationships. And so I am getting ready, if you would, to move to the action stage. And we have to have the resolve to make some changes in our thinking. It comes from within. Everything starts with a thought. Everything. Everything that is divine idea starts with a thought. And that thought comes from what we call divine mind. And so I move into this action stage. And this is a stage where people are overtly modifying their behavior and their surroundings. Did you hear that? Behavior and surroundings. And so change is more visible to others, and that leads us into what we call the maintenance stage. So I've moved through these stages of change, and I get to the maintenance stage, and this is where I want to keep it going, you know. I want to stay in that state of change. But what happens? Sometimes I take a step backwards, a couple steps backwards, before it really takes hold. So what I have to learn to do is not judge myself for that, not say this doesn't work, this is crazy, this isn't me. Instead, we set an intention to be the change that we have the capability of becoming. And that might mean sometimes step back and step forward. And remind myself during that moment that I am spiritually enlightened enough that I can take the change, make the change, and set the intention when I get out of alignment with it, I'm going to come back to it. And we can do it in a way that is constant and helps us grow and helps us be in the moment and helps us to love ourselves fully, and that is that maintenance stage. Most people who feel themselves changing go through the maintenance stage, all of those stages, 3 or 4 times before they get to the level where the habit has been broken and they're on target, and they know it. Their way of thinking has changed. Now, Jesus was a catalyst for change. And there are certain Bible verses that kind of indicate that. And Jesus prayed and relied on the Holy Spirit literally for every change. That's what he was doing. The Spirit within him, the I am within him, the Christ within him. And he was trying to teach us to do things. And so he said in Luke 5:15, "Yet the news about him spread all the more, so that crowds of people came to hear him and to be healed of their sicknesses. But Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed." Jesus started his teachings, started his mission by going into the wilderness and praying. And struggling with what was his to do. You know, should I feed everybody in the world? I have that capability. I believe that. No, that's not my calling. Should I jump off of a large mountain or off of the temple so that everybody and float down so everybody will notice me? That's not my job. That's changing the world from the outside rather than from the inside. So how do I do that? I pray and I meditate. That's what Jesus was an example of, that we should go within ourselves to find the answers. And I would say to you that if you don't meditate regularly, start doing it, and do it a minute twice a day at first. And all that means is just shut your eyes, or that's what I do, shut your eyes and just sit there for a minute and see what happens. And don't expect anything. And what I mean by that is sometimes if I sit for a minute, 5 minutes, 30 minutes, when I was first taught about meditation, you were supposed to be in meditation for 1 hour, and if you didn't do that, you didn't really meditate. So I guess I didn't really meditate, because by an hour I was already asleep. But anyway, and what I've learned is that each person has a different habit of meditation. It does grow. You can be longer and longer in meditation, okay? And that what happens is internal, and it happens for you. And it may be different each day. One of the tough things in meditation, the reason people find themselves uncomfortable in meditation, is because it starts to bring up that stuff that you have to work on. It starts to bring on the feelings of anxiousness, the anger sometimes. And through meditation, we can learn to handle that and release that and let that go. And set the intention we will not be that way if it's harmful, if it hurts myself or others. And so that we can dialogue and work with people in a loving way. But we've got to go to that place of prayer and meditation to do that. Jesus also made declarative statements, we would call them affirmations, of his purposes and processes and the motives to all that would listen. In one sense, he said, I have come not to do my own will, but the will of him who has sent me. Some people listened to that. Other people said, oh, Jesus was saying you got to worship me, you got to be like me because I'm the only Son of God. He never said that. He said, I follow the will of that which sent me. You and I are to follow the will of that which created and sent us. We are messengers just like Jesus was. And so he was saying that you too can use affirmations to affirm who you are and what you are. I know you hear it all the time, but say with me this. I am a spiritual being.
I am a spiritual being.
Having a spiritual experience.
Having a spiritual experience.
In the human condition. And therefore, everything is sacred. So, the next thing is that Jesus also emphasized that change must first occur internally before it can be demonstrated externally. And here is a quote that you've heard before. Neither do men pour new wine into old wine skins. If they do, the skins will burst. The wine will run out, and the wineskins will be ruined. No, they pour new wine into new wineskins, and both are preserved. And I think what that means is that if we go internally and make the changes that are necessary, changes in core values, changes in beliefs that might not serve us, changes in our attitude about ourselves because somebody said when I was 5 years old or 12 years old, I couldn't do this or I couldn't do that. And I took it on and bought it. And I still believe that. That when I go within myself, I can make those changes. And that I can't externally make the change and just say, okay, I'm going to act like somebody else. And therefore, everything's going to be fine. You got to go inside so that you can take a new thing and put it into a new wineskin. Otherwise, it won't work. So we live life from the inside out, and we demonstrate from the inside out. You see, Jesus Christ stands out as the most effective change agent in recorded history. And he really had a therapeutic encounter in the way that he taught, in the way that he believed in people, and the way that he shared his life and his example with people. And what he allowed us to have, the ability to have, is paradigm shifts in our thinking. to change our perception and to be transformed at the heart level. In the class that I graduated from in seminary, we had a statement, a declaration, an affirmation of who we were. And at that time, Unity was going through a lot of turmoil. And so our class said we are a catalyst for change in Unity. And we said that a lot for 2 years. It was written, we read it, we said it in chapels. And we didn't know what that meant. We really didn't. We just knew we would do something to help. So what's happened is one of my classmates is in charge of the UWSI, which is the Unity Spiritual Institute, okay, which is online new courses, and has been vice president of Unity Worldwide Headquarters for about 10 years. Another classmate was in charge of communications for all of Unity for about 8 years, and now has probably one of the larger churches in Unity, a real blessing to the movement. As some of you know, I'm Unity Worldwide Ministries chair, and hopefully are guiding us in a certain direction and helpful. And then there's a class member who's chair of the bylaws team, who was an attorney. People like that. So our class has really become that catalyst for change, because we set the intention and we kept saying it till we believed it. And then we looked for the opportunity to be there and to make that change. And that's what happens when you allow Spirit just to guide you and direct you, and you don't get caught up in the message in such a way you're going to make the change happen. You're going to make this happen. I'm going to make myself think a different way. It doesn't work that way. We release and let go and let God. And when we do that, our lives are truly transformed. Thank you.